First of all, I would like to welcome you to this specially called meeting of the Marion County Library Board. Today is Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. For the record, I'll ask the board members, starting down there with Robert, to introduce themselves. Your name will be enough.
My name's Robert Kellye. I work for Goodwill Bank.
My name is Linda Inglis. I'm a retired school teacher, 36 years.
Wendell Sweeten, retired teacher.
Vicki Messer, 39-year paramedic and work at the radio station.
Interesting combination. I'll introduce myself.
June Grimes, social service worker in the county, 40 years,
Also retired by this.
and retired.
You want to introduce yourselves?
Hello, my name's Eric Burnett, and I'm the attorney for the board.
Mr. Hudson, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. Chairman Lodge, members of the board, I'm Sam Hudson, attorney at Sequatchie County. Of course, I represent the appellant, Ms. Kellye.
Thanks for running down here.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
This is an appeal hearing to review the termination of Kellye Hogan as a result of her timely filed appeal pursuant to the Marion County Library System Personnel Policy HB-026. This can be boring, but it's all right. Okay. Section 3 of the Marion County Library Board bylaws vests the board with the power to handle employee discipline issues which have reached the appeal phase. As a courtesy to Ms. Hogan, we offered to hold this meeting in private back in May. However, Ms. Hogan wished to proceed with a public hearing. And we've already seen her attorney and also our attorney. Kellye Hogan was hired in June of 2023 to be the library director of the Bean Pearson Public Library. She served in that capacity until her termination by the executive director on April 21, 2025, pursuant to HB-026H. An employee shall have the right to appeal to the board for reconsideration of a termination, provided that the employee has already requested and received a review of the decision by the director or executive director. Because the termination was made by the executive director, no executive director review is required. Therefore, this appeal is hearing its first and final review of the termination decision. The order of the hearing. The board has been provided with a statement from Ms. Sandra Crabtree, former executive director, as to the reason she terminated Ms. Hogan's employment. Marion County Library Board Attorney Eric Burnett will read the statement from Ms. Crabtree as the reasons for her decision. Ms. Hogan will be permitted an opportunity to present the reasons why she believes that she should not have been terminated. The board reserves the right to ask questions at any time during this hearing. Once the board hears from Ms. Hogan, we will entertain motions from the board as to the issues before us and vote on any of the motions presented. Following our decision, we will entertain public comments.
Because Ms. Crabtree had a previously scheduled vacation, is out of town, I'm going to read the statement that she has provided.
Speak louder, please. Speak louder, please.
I will try. The events that led to the termination of Kellye Hogan from the position of Library Director for the Bean Pearson Public Library are as follows. Marion County Library Board's approved job description that was approved on 11/12/2019 and revised and approved on 6/30/2020 states that the Library Director is responsible for the operation and the administration of the assigned facility, including, quote, maintaining and organizing an appropriate stock inventory of reading and viewing materials. The annual evaluation of the Bean Pearson Public Library Director Kellye Hogan was performed in June of 2024. Exhibit 1 in the packet, if anyone wants to see it, Kellye's areas of improvement on this evaluation was to, number 9, maintain statistical records of library circulation and usage of the building. Specifically, the evaluation states that she will, quote, be doing an inventory of the books later this year in order to create a starting point for an accurate count of the inventory. From this point on until December, I brought up the inventory to her every now and then to see when she would be starting it. She always had an excuse that either she was too busy or we would talk about it next week. On December the 2nd, 2024, I was speaking with Kellye about starting the inventory on Tuesday. It is Exhibit 3. This is almost 6 months after we had originally spoken about it during the annual evaluation, and during that 6-month period, Kellye was having some kidney problems, and the trial of her brother's murder had been set, which was later moved to a different date. So I was trying to work with her around these personal issues. I told her that I knew it was our first day back from Thanksgiving, and that I wouldn't even think about starting the inventory on this particular Monday. Before I could even finish my question about beginning the inventory on Tuesday, she responded with a very loud hell no. I just looked at her and stated that that was not the response I was expecting. She then started talking about how they were swamped and that there was no time to do an inventory. I told her that it would not be a hard thing to do, that she actually had 4 people, including me, that could work on the inventory, and that if she had other work to do, I would work with her. I would work with Tammy Parker, the assistant director, and Abby Charan, the library clerk. She kept giving excuses as to why she didn't want to start the inventory that week. I told her that she was the one who stated that we could start the inventory on the first week of December. And I also told her that it would go pretty fast, that we could probably even be close to finished by the end of the year. No decision was made at this point. There were patrons present in the library when this incident occurred. On Tuesday, December the 3rd, 2024, Kellye did apologize to me for her outburst on Monday, saying that she was having kidney problems again, and that she was worried and had a lot of things on her mind. I told her that I understood and that the inventory was really not going to be as big of a deal as she thought. I told her that the inventory was easy to do technology-wise and not to worry about it taking up a lot of time. I told her that we could work on it a couple hours each day. She seemed more agreeable to this at this time. However, the inventory did not take place. I mentioned the issue of the inventory not getting done to the Personnel Committee a couple of times. The Personnel Committee would periodically check to see if the inventory had begun, and I would tell them it had not. At the January 9th, 2025 Personnel Committee meeting, Exhibit 5, I informed the committee of the status of the Bean Pearson inventory, which was that it had not started. Sharon Yarber, chairman of the Personnel Committee, along with other members, told me to set a deadline for Kellye to have the inventory finished. I told them that I would do that and I would give her a specific deadline. At the beginning of March 2025, the inventory had still not begun. Again, her brother's murder trial had been set for some time in February, so I was trying to work with her on this. I began the inventory myself and had completed the paperback section and started on the young adult section. On Tuesday, March the 4th, 2025, Exhibit 7, I asked Kellye to come back to the paperback section and answer some questions for me about how she wanted to proceed with this section. We had a discussion about the different sizes of paperbacks, the softbound books, and how to proceed with the organization of this. Kellye then stated to me that this is why she wanted to wait to do the inventory, and that I said that we had been waiting since before Christmas and that we were going to be doing the inventory now. I told her that I was going to show Tammy and Abby how to do the inventory, and then we would get Nathan, our IT person, to set up another computer so that more than one person could be working on the inventory at a time. Nathan had already set up a computer and scanner for me to begin the inventory. She then stated to me, "No offense to you, but they," meaning Kellye and the library employees, "should be doing the inventory and not me because I wasn't a librarian." I said, "No, but I am your boss and I'm telling you that we are doing this." She stated that she was not trying to usurp my authority, and then said that and that this is why she wanted to schedule the inventory. I told Kellye that her wanting to schedule the inventory had nothing to do with this. I told her, if you can run a computer, you can do the inventory, and that I had nothing but excuses since I began trying to get this done before Thanksgiving. I asked her if she needed me to contact Henry Lodge, the chairman of the library board. She stated, "Why would you call him?" To which I responded, "So we can have a discussion about this matter." She then said, "Okay, I see," and walked off and went back to her desk. After this incident, on the same day, March the 4th, 2025, I gave Kellye a written reprimand, Exhibit 8, which stated, "I have spoken with Kellye multiple times about getting the inventory completed. The inventory shall be finished by Monday, March the 31st, or further disciplinary action will be taken. I went over the form with her and pointed out the Marion County Library Board Policy HB-025, subsection 3, subsection I. Deliberate failure or unreasonable delay in carrying out instructions and deliberate or willful resistance toward or refusal to carry out a proper order of a superior, and HB 026, subsection C, 11, failure to follow reasonable verbal or written instructions, and 12, insubordination that were referenced on the form. I also pointed out that she had received a verbal warning for the previous incident on December the 2nd, 2024. Kellye reviewed the form and the policies and stated that she did not agree with the insubordination part, but that she did agree with the section that stated deliberate or willful resistance toward or refusal to carry out the proper order of a superior. I asked her to sign the reprimand that she had read and understood, and she would not sign it. She stated that she had to leave to pick up her child from school. I stated that was fine, but she needed to sign the form. She would not sign it and left to get her child. When she returned, I told her that she did not have to sign the form if she didn't want to, and I would make a note of that on the form. She was smiling and laughing and said no, that she would sign it. She did sign the form, and I gave her a copy of the same, along with the policies. She did ask if she could type up something to attach to the reprimand, and I told her that was fine. She did not bring anything written to me until March the 10th, 2025, a copy of which is in her personnel file, which you have in the packet labeled as Exhibit 9. I would like to point out that Kellye was given a 4-week period to complete the inventory. She did not start the inventory, but told Tammy Parker, her assistant director, to begin the inventory. Toward the end of this period, I spoke with Tammy and found out that she was having to go back into the inventory and weed out all of the 2014 library books that had been physically taken out of the library but not deleted from the inventory. I then gave more time to complete the inventory due to this fact and due to the fact that Tammy was the only person besides me that was working on the inventory. Also, on March the 3rd, 2025 and March the 5th, 2025, I also purchased 2 more scanners and an additional label maker to aid in the completion of the inventory. That would have given us 3 dedicated computers with scanners to move around the library for the inventory, a second label maker to fix any labels on the books that needed replacing. I told Kellye to install the label maker on Abby's computer so that she would be a second person to be able to make labels for the inventory. To my knowledge, this was never done. On April the 7th, I asked Kellye how the inventory was going. Exhibit 10. She stated that she did not know that Tammy was handling it. For the record, Tammy has been the only person besides me that has ever worked on the inventory during that time period spoken about in this statement. There were also other incidences during this period that occurred. Kellye negotiated with the city of South Pittsburgh about a full-time city position instead of a part-time city position that was in place when I came on as executive director. I wasn't told about these discussions or involved in these discussions as executive director until after the fact. That is Exhibit 6. I told Kellye that I was going to get a storage building for the board and the other 2 libraries so we could use it to store things. She went ahead and got her own storage building and was going to pay for it out of the Bean Pearson checking account. I told her that that was okay since she had already done it. And that's why I wanted to get one for all of us so that we would be paying 1 bill instead of 2 or 3 bills. She stated that she did not want her items from the Bean Pearson to be mixed up with the board items. I told her we could have designated areas for each library, then ended the conversation. I told Kellye that she would need an invoice from the storage, she would need an invoice from the storage facility, and she said that she was trying to get one from them. I never saw any invoice for the storage building, and I did not know if she had ever moved any items into the storage unit. Later, I spoke with David Abbott, one of the co-owners of the storage units in South Pittsburgh, about the unit and the fact that we needed an invoice and that I wasn't sure if they had ever been paid for the unit at this point or if we even had a unit. He stated that Mike Powers, the other co-owner, had handled this and that he would call him and see if he could find out and call me back. After several weeks, I have not heard back from them. That is Exhibit 6 as well. Kellye ordered t-shirts for the employees from one of her friends. The t-shirt had a risque message on it that was not appropriate for library wear. I told Kellye that I would have to get the board's opinion on the shirt and I would get back to her. The next day, there was a post shared on the Facebook page about the t-shirt. I then texted Kellye and told her that the post needed to be taken off of the website and that the board was not in favor of this shirt. She never responded to my text, and the post is still on Facebook, Exhibit 10. I set up a Zoom training for Kellye and Kathy Black, the director of the Whitwell Library, with Overdrive, the program that runs the library app. I had spoken with both library directors several times about this training. The meeting was on April the 8th at 9 a.m. When I arrived at the library, Kellye was not there. I asked Abby where she was. Abby stated that Kellye had a meeting and that she was a very busy lady. I texted her, a copy of which is in the packet labeled Exhibit 11, asking Kellye where she was and that we had a meeting. She never texted me back or ever mentioned where she had been during this time. Later, she came in and brought me the financials while the meeting was going on. I told her that she was supposed to be in this meeting, and she told me that she had already done the training with Kate Huddleston, the regional director, and Cindy Matthews, the assistant regional director, several months ago, and didn't need it. This was the first time she had ever mentioned this. The previous times we had discussed the training, she was excited about it and wanted me to set up the training for her and Kathy. I asked Kate about the training. She told me that she did not do overdrive training and that Kellye did attend a regional training from another region's assistant director. Cindy was at this meeting, but she was an attendee and not the trainer. Neither Kate nor Cindy had done this particular training with Kellye. Untruthfulness. On April the 15th, 2025, I was at the copy machine to get paper that I had printed. Abby was there and handed me a piece of paper that she thought was mine, and it was labeled Kate. I glanced at the paper and realized that there were a list of things to speak to Kate about, something about the budget, and knew it was not my paper and that something didn't seem right. Kellye spoke up and said that it was her paper. I told her that I would need a copy of it. She said, "Why would you need a copy of it?" I said, "It has budget items that you were discussing with Kate, then I need a copy of it." She said no, that it was just talking points, and it was for her yearly meeting with Kate next month, and that I didn't need a copy of it. She did not give me a copy, so I went into my office and texted Kate and asked her if she had a meeting with Kellye for next month. Kate called me back and said she was sorry that she had a bad feeling about the meeting when Kellye called her to set it up, because she was afraid that she was getting into the middle of something. I told her that Kellye would not let me see the list of things that she was going to discuss with Kate, and that she had said this list was for her yearly meeting with Kate. Kate said yes, they do a yearly meeting with all the directors to discuss how things are going. Kate then said that Kellye had contacted her and wanted to meet her before the Jasper Public Library meeting, which was the same day of 4/15. Kate told me that she called Kellye back and told her that she would have to go through me before she would meet with Kellye, and canceled the meeting with her. Kellye never brought this up or mentioned it to me. Later, I found the list on Kellye's computer and printed it. A copy of this list is in your packet and speaks for itself as Exhibit 12. Also in your packet, Exhibits 2 and 4 are in regard to Kellye refusing to sign her pay information as her paycheck and accompanying notes with regard to this issue. I have followed the direction of the Marion County Library Board as my employer and the policies and the procedures of the Marion County Library Board during my time there as executive director. The unwillingness and flat-out refusal to work on the inventory, along with the other bulleted points in this statement, are the reason behind the termination of Kellye Hogan as director for the Bean Pearson Public Library.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Lodge. Ms. Hogan has deferred to me to speak on her behalf, and of course, if there's questions, we will certainly answer them. I want to thank you again for giving us the opportunity to come and speak to you tonight, and I'll give you a brief roadmap of where I'm going, and then I'll get a little bit deeper into the elements and the substance of Ms. Hogan's appeal. Number one, I want to point out to you that as just read by your attorney, there's about five, maybe 1.5 space pages of explanation from Ms. Crabtree about an inventory. Okay? That is not a terminable or a fireable offense. I'm going to get to that in a second. But I will tell you that in Ms. Hogan's entire personnel packet, which you have, there is one counseling statement. One and one only. And that's when she ultimately counseled Ms. Hogan on this issue of the inventory. All of the other incidents that she's describing in her statement and including in her packet are simply nothing more than her notes of interactions that she had with Ms. Hogan over this relevant time period, and there's not a single indication in there that she counseled Ms. Hogan a single time about any of those events. Not one. Those are nothing more than her notes documenting what she's claiming was alleged problems with Ms. Hogan. But I'll point out to you that reading the minutes of the board from the last year, there's not a single minute or single mention in any of your minutes about any personnel committee or Ms. Crabtree coming before the board to express any discontent or dissatisfaction with Ms. Hogan. Not a one. Not a one. So it was not a terminable offense. We look, it's all about this inventory. Now she throws in, Ms. Crabtree throws in a few good blurbs in there about perhaps a risque t-shirt. This t-shirt said that librarians make shh happen. That was the risque t-shirt. Make shh with the finger over the lips happen. That was the risque t-shirt that apparently was just a scandalous thing by Ms. Hogan. And then you also see that perhaps Ms. Hogan attended a training without running it by the executive director. There's no counseling statement in her packet about this telling her, hey, run these things through me. No, just Ms. Crabtree's notes. And then I believe the other one is the fact Ms. Crabtree seemed to be upset that perhaps Ms. Hogan was talking with the regional director. In her own notes, there is an annual meeting every year by which the library directors talk to this regional director. Ms. Hogan had every right to talk to the regional director, every right. And the fact that Ms. Crabtree felt left out of that, I guess she should take that up with the policies and procedures and the statutes that apply and actually give Ms. Hogan the right to talk to the regional director. But that's where you first see what the real issue is. Because if you look in the notes there that Ms. Crabtree provided you, the gist of her problem with Ms. Hogan talking to the regional director was about budgeting. So I'm going to get back to that in a second. But what we really have, when you listen to the statement that Ms. Crabtree wrote, is this is all about not timely completing an inventory. It is not a terminable or a fireable offense. Now, sure, your bylaws, your policies say that employees are employees at will and they can be fired for any reason at any time or for no reason. But you, as a board, are entrusted to the wise and proper management of taxpayers' funds. Your entire funding for this Marion County Library Board comes from the county and the cities. So if the board wants to simply say, we can fire anybody we want at any time for no good reason, bad reason, whatever, understand that you're doing that while you're managing and supposed to be good stewards of taxpayer funds. So I would suggest to you, especially since your policies provide for an appeal before the board, that you go beyond the we can fire anybody we want and determine if in fact this is really what should have happened. I would submit to you it's not, as you see the members of the community here. I suggest to you, although we haven't polled them, they're not here to express to you they support the firing of Ms. Hogan. Now, secondly, not a terminable offense. I think the proof is going to show that there was no authority by Ms. Crabtree or Chairman Lodge, with all due respect, to terminate Ms. Hogan. I'll get into that in a second. And then secondly, or thirdly, I guess I'm on now, there's some serious questions if you in fact take the position that Ms. Crabtree or Chairman Lodge was authorized to terminate Ms. Hogan. That really raises some serious questions about the violation of the Tennessee Open Meeting Act. And we've already been down this road once when the first hearing was scheduled and it was insisted that it be a closed meeting. But I'll cite to you TCA section 8-44-101 basically says all meetings of any governing body are declared to be public meetings open to the public at all times except as provided by the Constitution of Tennessee. Subsection E of that Section 8-44-102, subsection E, specifically applies the Tennessee Open Meetings Act to nonprofits established for local government that receive more than 30% of their funding from local sources. That is this board. And then finally, the ultimate reason, and I think once you get past the statements of Ms. Crabtree that she tried to pick and choose and organize by a timeline, you'll see that this is not an issue of Ms. Hogan not performing the inventory on time. It's an issue of Ms. Hogan questioning financial mismanagement, why her salary was continually changed, why her pay was subtracted from her. This has happened over a period of time, and so if someone pays you money and you then take it back, and then you sign a contract saying this is what your gross salary is going to be, and then 6 months later you come back and say, oh, we messed up, here's what it's supposed to be. That's when the problem started, around November of 2024. So, let's dig into the packet that I gave you. What is a terminable offense? Well, I suggest to you failure to complete an inventory is not a terminable offense. I'll point out Exhibit 1. That is a report dated February 9th, 2018 from the Tennessee Comptroller of the Treasury. Whitwell Library Director indicted for theft. 2018, Whitwell Library was part of the Marion County Library Board. Marilyn Frazier, the director of the Whitwell Library Board, was indicted for theft of $3,680.37. I've given you not only the report, but the findings of the comptroller. Not only was $3,680.37 of taxpayer funds and private donations from the community unaccounted for, some of the things that were accounted for were cigarettes. How could a director of a library even remotely justify using taxpayer funds, even if in the amount of $21.86, to purchase cigarettes? Well, Ms. Frazier pled guilty in the Marion County Circuit Court to this theft. Now, she was able to use the concept of diversion to go on probation and have her record expunged, so she came away without a felony conviction on her record. That was February 9th, 2018. Did the board terminate her for being convicted of theft of public funds? No, in fact, turn to Exhibit 2. You will see on page 3 of Exhibit 2, which is actually the Marion County Public Library minutes from the December 27th, 2022 meeting. Turn to page 3, and it looks to be either the third or fourth full paragraph. It starts with Personnel Committee offered a review of the December 13th Personnel Committee meeting. Here is where you see in your minutes that the Personnel Committee actually discussed the disciplinary issue and brought it to the board for approval, unlike anything you see in the minutes regarding Ms. Hogan. Not a single mention for 2 years of her employment in your minutes about any problems with Ms. Hogan. None. However, after 4 years later, after your Whitwell Library Director was indicted for theft, the board recommended that she, Ms. Frazier, receive a disciplinary letter with a 3-month probation, with expectations of exacting accuracy of her own actions and her staff. That was how the board handled a theft of taxpayer funds 4 years after an indictment. And I believe, as been previously stated in other public meetings here in Marion County, Ms. Frazier was ultimately allowed to retire from the public library. So when you compare felony theft of taxpayer money with an alleged refusal to conduct an inventory, which, by the way, had not been ever conducted since 2014. why is it suddenly something that you have to do or you get fired? Those two don't add up. Those two do not add up. Now, I'll point out while we're on that, regarding a terminable offense, Ms. Hogan was asked to complete the inventory starting the day after Thanksgiving. That's the first minutes, first indication you see in Ms. Crabtree's notes. She said she talked to her a few times. First time she told her, all right, we're going to get this done, was the day after Thanksgiving. Okay? So, Ms. Crabtree, apparently, from the day after Thanksgiving, didn't get it done by April 21st, 2025, and was fired. Okay? Whipple Public Library closed for 4 months to relocate. Supposedly going to do the inventory during that 4-month shutdown. The inventory is still not complete at Whipple Library. Still not complete after being completely shut down for 4 months. Board, I submit to you, you cannot stand behind Ms. Crabtree's decision, if it was in fact hers, to terminate Ms. Hogan based on this. Now, you can say, we hired Ms. Crabtree to manage the libraries. We trust her judgment. She's been a library board member for a long time, was the chairman of the library board. We're going to go with Ms. Crabtree's decision. She was hired as the executive director in 2024, if I'm not mistaken. During that time period, 2 of your 3 libraries have withdrawn from the board. 2 out of 3, leaving you with 1 library. You're at the point now where you're having to spend money for an attorney, fine attorney, but you're having to spend taxpayers' money to justify the termination of Ms. Hogan based on the failure to complete an inventory. That's hard to do as a public servant. It really is hard to do. Now, moving on to my next point, and that is, I don't think, based on my review of the paperwork of the board, that there was any authority to terminate Ms. Hogan. All right, I'm going to draw you to Exhibit 3 of the packet. That is a termination letter dated April 21st, 2025. Termination of employment. Ms. Hogan, your employment with the Marion County Library Board is terminated effective April 21st, 2025. Your final check includes 5 vacation days and 16 sick days. The check is for all wages earned through April 21st. Thank you for your service to the Marion County Library Board. Sincerely, Henry W. Lodge, Chairman, Marion County Library Board. Now, in your opening statement, you stated that Sandra Crabtree fired Ms. Hogan. Her name's not on this letter of termination of employment dated April 21st, 2025. In fact, it's Chairman Lodge's signature. I submit to you, reviewing the board's minutes, there was no authority granted to Chairman Lodge by the board at any point prior to April 21st, 2025 to terminate Ms. Hogan. Now, so you might say, well, he was basically just signing on behalf of Ms. Crabtree. Let's turn to Exhibit 4. Those are the meeting minutes, the minutes of the meeting of March 7th, 2025. And in that meeting, as you can see, number 1, a motion was made for the approval of the resignation of the executive director, Sandra Crabtree, as of Monday, March 31st, 2025. Gene Grimes made the motion, and Linda Inglis seconded. Motion passed. All in favor. This is March 7th. Keep in mind the termination date was April 21st. Now, flipping over to page 2, number 4 in your minutes, the board wanted to make sure that a plan was in place for the efficient transition of the newly hired executive director. A motion was made by Gene Grimes for the current executive director, Sandra Crabtree, to stay full-time until Monday, March 31st, 2025. Remember, date of termination, April 21st, 21 days after March 31st. If a suitable candidate has not been hired by that time, the current executive director, Sandra Crabtree, will stay full-time until Wednesday, April 16th, 2025. Again, date of termination, April 21, 5 days after April 16th. After the April 16th, 2025 date, the current executive director, Sandra Crabtree, will be paid on an hourly contract basis, not as the executive director, but on a contract basis, for work performed as the executive director until a suitable candidate is found. That's what your minutes say, until a suitable candidate is found. The motion was seconded by Sharon Yarber. Motion passed. All in favor? So, pursuant to your meeting minutes from March 7th, Sandra Crabtree had authority as executive director as long as April 16th, 2025. Let's go to Exhibit 5. Those are your meeting minutes from April 10th of 2025, 11 days before Ms. Hogan was terminated. This was a special called meeting to hire the executive director, April 10th. Flip to the second page. New business, approval of the recommendation and/or hiring for the executive director position. Recommendation was presented to the board by Crabtree and a motion requested for a vote. Point of clarification requested by Secretary Vicki Messer. Clarification was requested for the name of the candidate for the minutes, since the name had not been mentioned or submitted prior to the meeting via any communication route between board members. So I'm curious, and so is Ms. Hogan and probably the rest of the public, how in the world was the board going to vote on an executive director when a name had not already been submitted? That suggests a violation of Tennessee Open Meetings Act. The name Emily Malsey, a teacher at a Whitwell school, was presented by Crabtree. A motion was made by Sharon Yarber, noting the committee recommendation was Ms. Malsey, made and seconded by Robert Kellye. All ayes, noes, yeas. So as of April 10th, 2025, the Marion County Library Board had hired a new executive director, Emily Malsey. Ms. Crabtree was out without any authority whatsoever as of that date. And if you look at your minutes, there's nothing in the minutes that state when Ms. Malsey would assume her job duties. It seemed to me that would be as of the date you hired her, April 10th, 2025. In the absence of the board's minutes, that's what we're left to conclude, because the board speaks through its minutes. Because the meeting was a special called meeting to approve the hiring of a new director only, no other business came before the board at this time. Motion made by Kellye, second by Yarber to adjourn. All ayes, no nays. So, what we're left with is a letter from Chairman Lodge, dated April 21st. No approval from the board for him to sign that letter terminating Ms. Hogan. And certainly, Ms. Crabtree did not have the authority as of April 21st, 2025 to terminate Ms. Hogan. Now, that brings us to what this appears to be really about. And that is Ms. Hogan questioning primarily why her salary continued to be inconsistent, continued to be changed, and continued to be less than what she was promised it would be. Exhibit 6 is where this particular line, point of emphasis is concerned. Now, mind you, Ms. Hogan was hired in June of 2023. In July of 2023, this very board passed a motion, or maybe it was the county commission, I may be getting my public boards confused, but there was a vote to approve an increase of $12,500 to be divided between the Jasper Library Director and the South Pittsburgh Library Director. to get them up to par with Whitwell's library director. May have that wrong. You think Whitwell and South Pittsburgh up to par with Jasper's.
Right.
You got three towns here. Forgive me if I get confused at some point. Now, what the proof will show if you get to digging into your budgets, notes, and things of that nature, that $12,500 was not equally devoted to the directors of Whitwell and South Pittsburgh. Jasper and South Whitwell and South Pittsburgh, the two that were getting corrected. Let's just move past that. And so, however, though, Miss Hogan did get about $3,000 in July of 2023. Well, fast forward a few months, Miss Crabtree comes to her and tells her, we messed up. You were overpaid. And so for the next several months, that money that she was paid, $3,000, is deducted from her salary. Not in equal amounts every month. Different amounts every month. So obviously this would raise the concern of an employee who, number one, was promised money and then it was taken away, not giving an explanation necessarily other than we overpaid you or we miscalculated, and you start getting uneven deductions from your salary. That is the environment in which we were on June 14th, 2024. That is Exhibit 6. This was the contract that Ms. Crabtree, signed by Chairman Lodge, presented to Ms. Hogan, the BPP, Bean Pearson Public Library Director, 2024-2025. Earnings, gross salary, $44,029.07. Then you see the employees' deductions and TCRS. So a net salary would be $37,747.83. Now, in your packet, you have a contract that is all marked up, where changes, handwritten notes are marked through that. That is not the contract Ms. Hogan signed on June 14th, 2024. You have and you should in your packet, a contract from Ms. Hogan or with Ms. Hogan dated June 14th, 2024 with handwritten notations on it, marking through certain things. That was marked up after the fact. So on June 14th, 2024, Ms. Hogan signed a contract signed by Ms. Crabtree and Chairman Lodge with a gross salary of $44,029.07 and a net after taxes and TCRS deducted of $37,747.83. Now, right about the same time, June 28th, 2024, you see an evaluation from the executive director for Kellye Hogan by Ms. Crabtree. Ms. Crabtree gives Ms. Hogan all 1s and 2s after being on the job a year. 1s and 2s. 1 is an area of strength and 2 is fully adequate. There is not a single 3 on this, areas for improvement. Some expectations for this competency have not been met consistently. Now, Ms. Crabtree put in her packet an area of improvement that indicated performing an inventory. That was Ms. Hogan's self-evaluation. That was not Ms. Crabtree's evaluation. That was Ms. Hogan's self-evaluation. So if you look at Ms. Crabtree's, it's all 1s and 2s. No areas of improvement whatsoever. That's dated June 28, 2024. So after a year of being on the job, there's no problems with Ms. Hogan. Now, remind you, date-wise, she had signed the contract for employment on June 14, 2024. Now, you look in your packet that Ms. Crabtree provided, and it's also in Ms. Hogan's personnel packet. There's a note, again, from Ms. Crabtree. It's not a counseling statement, it's just a note. On Friday, November 22nd, I met with Kellye Hogan, director of the Bean Pearson Public Library, and June Grimes, board member and treasurer. Kellye had some questions with regard to her pay. June or November 22nd. I submit to you Friday, November 22nd is before Thanksgiving. Kellye, Ms. Hogan, is raising questions about the discrepancies in her pay. And this is about 3 paragraphs long, explaining all of the questions that Ms. Hogan had. It's very detailed, in fact. Well, lo and behold, the next week, the day after Thanksgiving, or the Monday after Thanksgiving, suddenly an inventory becomes important. An inventory. About a week or maybe less than that after Ms. Hogan has a meeting with Ms. Crabtree to discuss the discrepancies in her pay. The inventory suddenly becomes very important. And then, as you see, also in this exhibit, there is an unsigned contract with Ms. Hogan dated December 11th, 2024. Probably about 2 weeks after this issue of the salary is raised. And suddenly, it's changed. Her salary contract that Ms. Crabtree is complaining that she has refused to sign suddenly went from a gross salary of $44,029.07 to a budgeted salary plus benefits. In other words, giving Ms. Crabtree the benefit of the doubt, my assumption is she's saying this is what was totally budgeted for you, not your gross salary, despite the fact that we told you your gross salary was $44,029.07 on June 14th. Now we're mad at you and we're going to counsel you for not agreeing to sign the budget in which we reduce your net salary by about $500 a month. So, if the board wants to support Ms. Crabtree's decision to terminate Ms. Hogan because of this inventory, follow the dates. Follow the dates. The inventory only became this very, according to Ms. Crabtree, very important item, which had not been done since 2014 and still is not done in Whipple, after Ms. Hogan raised the issue with her pay. And then from there, it gets petty. Oh, Ms. Hogan didn't tell me she had already done a training. Oh, Ms. Hogan went out there and just completely embarrassed the board with these risque shirts of librarians make happen. And things of that nature. And I submit to you that it's not about this inventory. If the inventory were so important, Whipple's would have been done. And Sandra Crabtree, the executive director, would have ensured it was done during the 4 months that Whipple Library was completely shut down. When you compare what Ms. Crabtree has presented to you as a terminal offense with what the board did from 2018 when your Whipple Library was indicted and pled guilty to felony theft, they're not even in the same ballpark. Now, at this point, as the board is well aware, South Pittsburgh, the Dean Pearson Public Library, has voted to withdraw from the Marion County Library Board. So, at this point, I don't even think you have the authority to reinstate Ms. Hogan. If you think you do, we'll allow you to do that. In the alternative, we would respectfully ask that one of you esteemed board members make a motion to pay Ms. Hogan for the 2 months of which she was terminated, from April 21st up until July 1st of 2025. Pay her, pay the employer's portion of the taxes, deduct her taxes and things of that nature, and pay her portion of the TCRS. I submit to you, board members, again, you have a duty to the faithful and wise stewardship of taxpayer funds. This is not a situation where the board should blindly go along with its former director, executive director, who now has you having only one library to manage. right thing. It's obvious that the community is in support of Ms. Hogan. I don't think there's any question about that, and I would respectfully request that a motion be made to restore this. I don't want to be overly obstinate or overbearing, but this very issue has already cost you money in attorney's fees, and based off the issues that I've raised to you and pointed out to you tonight, if the board fails to do the right thing, it's liable to incur, just quite frankly, more legal costs. I don't think the board should exercise this decision lightly when you're in charge of taxpayer money. Thank
Do we have any questions from the board? By the board. Yeah, any questions by the board to Ms. Hogan or her attorney?
Can I make a statement? All this seems to be falling on Sandra Crabtree. Yes. When really it is the board that, by the use of having such a person, to discover that South Pittsburgh had thousands of books that were missing. We're about. It was the expectation, I suppose, of the previous librarians that they knew how many books we had. Well, it came to our attention about a year and a half ago to estimate. Hey guys, every one of these libraries say they have all these books and they don't. They're not showing up. And we're going, what? And now, okay guys, we're a taxpayer. If you're a business person, you need to know what your product is. You need to know what you've got to present. We're responsible volunteers that we just now found this out. This thing needs to be corrected and quickly, because that is poor business. Is if you don't even know what you have in what we call collections, or computers, books, anything that's inside that library building is part of what's considered a collection. We felt shocked, really. That's when it became important to us. We, as a board, need to get a handle on this. Therefore, guess who we have to put the pressure on? The executive director. That is her role. Get this thing done. We have a responsibility to know how this money is flowing and how much we take in, and just get it right. So we put the pressure on her. Obviously, we were trying to do the right thing. Now, we put pressure on her we gave it to her in June. We said, you've got to get this done. And in the meantime, come December, we kind of made some agreements to try to get it done by then, or at least start. And then this all happens. We have somebody that's not able or willing or to do it. And other conflicts kept coming up. And we realized this is, not satisfactory, Sandra Crabtree. We want this done. That was her responsibility and her authority.
Can you provide documentation in the minutes?
I'm sorry, sir. This is the
So
board's.
that's our comment, is that we were trying to do the right thing.
Would you do it if you're not being paid?
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Chairman Lodge, may I respond on behalf of?
I'm not finished.
right.
What about the money?
I'm not finished.
I'm sorry.
Now, the money part, I can tell you what happened there, because I was part to blame. We were so excited to get money from our county commission for any kind of increase, that's the 44,000 or whatever was written down there. We forgot to take out the FICA and the Social Security on the company's part or the board's part. We took it out of her part, because she has to, but you also, as an employer, have to do the same. Well, guess what? We didn't do it, and we didn't realize it till our accountant came in November and said, guys, you can run out of money in February. What? Or around that end period. And we said, what do you mean? Well, you all have put this amount down, and that is like the top amount of money you've got. It is not gonna be her gross pay. And so she said, we're gonna have to go back and send retirement money in. We're gonna have to send Social Security money in. It was just a mess. I mean, it was horrible to have to go to these people.
Excuse me.
It was terrible to have to go to these people and say, guys, we don't have enough money to get through the rest of the year in your salaries. It was awful. People make mistakes. So what we talked to them about, and I guess we could have ended their salaries in February, because we had no more money. We would have had to have done some sort of agreement or change with the Secretary of State, because there was no funding. There was a lot of things we could have done in that respect, because the Secretary of State's the one that agrees to how many hours you have to operate and etc. Anyway, long story short, we brought these girls in and we talked to them and we said, here's the problem. We have no money. How are we gonna pay you? And we said the only way we can figure out that we can continue to keep the libraries open and provide the services is to try to look at the year and back that up, you know, and so that's why they had monies taken out of that. It was terribly unfortunate, but we didn't have any other alternative. They agreed to it. And if I recall, I think our accountant even sat down with you and Henry and Sandra to look at your pay, even after you talked to me about it. Because to my...
Excuse me, if y'all would please
I know
respect the people
you all
talking.
don't want to hear what the facts are, but that's the facts. That's what happened. We're sorry we had to reduce their salary.
Excuse me,
But it was even that or not have a job. That's what it would have amounted to, because we had no more money. Call it mismanagement, call it crazy mistakes, whatever you want to call it. But it's the fact. And why she didn't point out to us the individual things, because she talked to me and she never really could, she just kept saying she just didn't think it was right. She didn't think, well, what is it that you don't find right? And even with our accountant came in and said that. What do you do? You know, what do you do if I'm not an accountant, but our accountant is, and she talked the facts. So I really don't think it's a salary issue. I think it's the board trying to do the right thing, to know how much we have in product and make sure we're supporting the taxpayer. Otherwise, we would have forgotten it. It is, what I've been told is an inventory is required. But if you're a darn good, responsible board, you're gonna know what you have. You're not gonna blow it off for the next 10 years.
I'd like to respond on behalf
So I'll direct this towards Member Grimes or any other board member. With respect to the budget, and being out of money, did not the board maintain all of the money that had been funded for Jasper Library after they withdrew, or did you send that back to Jasper?
Well, we didn't have that much money left, and that was the previous year, correct? Was it this past year? Okay, so I think we invested, like 26,000, I think, previously out of that budget. Their year ended October 15th, so we'd already spent a lot of money on Jasper Library.
But we were just one quarter into your fiscal year.
So, as I was going to point out, they were only with you a very short time period.
Well, 5
I've
months.
spoken with
4 months.
the attorney for Jasper, and so the board did in fact keep a substantial portion of the money that was budgeted for the Jasper Library even after it was
Piece of
through.
it.
Okay. And then how much does the board have in a savings account now?
I have about 35,000, and the reason we have it is because 2 years ago, our county commissions, did not pass their budget until about the end of August. And we had nothing in the pot, nothing. Was it maybe 2 or 3 years ago? I've been on this thing 6 years, it's hard to keep up.
We were advised.
We had, and we were advised, you guys, this could happen any given year, that we don't pass our budget, and you all don't get a dime, and in fact, this last year, I don't think we got anything to August. Now, had we not had something sitting back, we had no way to pay the staff.
Had closed
Did
doors.
the board vote, because I've looked at the minutes for the last 2 years and I don't see anything, of course I might have missed it. Did the board take any decision or even discuss the budgeting mistake that had been made with respect to the library's employees?
Did we discuss it with employees?
No, as a board, in an open meeting.
It was a board meeting, I believe.
We have committee meetings.
I-
We have committee meetings throughout.
I don't know.
So my
It's been
question would
a while.
be, so I understand you have committee meetings, which are also subject to the Tennessee Public Meetings Act. But reviewing the board minutes for the last year, I don't recall, and again, I could be mistaken, but I read them pretty closely. I don't remember there being any type of committee report about this mistake and how to address it. In other words, did the board ever consider taking money from the savings account and the money that it had kept for Jasper to correct its own budgeting error instead of putting that on the shoulders of the employees?
But the employees received all the money that, after the FICA and, retirement, and they received it all in that year. They didn't lose any money, they got the first 5 months more than they should have. And then the rest of the year, it leveled out. That's
Okay,
all
so
we
you're
could
saying
do.
they actually did not lose any money, you just changed their salary at the end of the year?
Had no more
That
money to
wasn't
pay.
voted on by the board.
That was what? What'd you say?
Said wasn't voted on by the board.
I don't know if we didn't do that or not. It may not have gotten in the minutes, but it was certainly approved.
It was, we had only X amount budgeted for that, so
Well, again, that's my point. We're talking about stewards of public funds and doing what's best for the county of Marion County, not just Whitwell, which at this point is all you do have to manage. But you speak through your minutes, and so the community is left with wondering how these decisions that affected your employees and are how affecting the community were made, and it's really not clear. But moving on to the second point, and Ms. Grimes, you did make some good points. A library and its board should know the books that are in the library, and that's an important thing, and it should be done. But again, reviewing the board's minutes for the last year and a half, 2 years, I don't see any mention of this serious problem of unaccountability or lack of accountability in the inventory of the library's books. The first year that Ms. Hogan was evaluated, June of '24, absolutely no mention that this very, very important inventory needed to be conducted. The only one that mentioned it was Ms. Hogan in her own self-evaluation. The executive director did not mention that. Again, if it's such important and good business to conduct an inventory, then I would expect someone to be fired for Whitwell's inventory not being done after 4 months of being closed for business. And then as a final matter, if it is such good business to which someone should be terminated for not conducting an inventory, then surely to goodness it would be even better business to fire somebody that stole thousands of dollars of public funds.
let me just point out that you presented a lot of history. None of us were on this board,
In 2017.
so
None
you know,
of us.
you can blame you can blame us for something that happened with a whole different board in place. But
How so?
that's,
2020.
and that, we're not,
Well, hold on.
was anybody on the board then? You were, Wendell?
No,
So,
in 2017.
Hold on, 17's when the theft occurred. December 22nd, 2022, when the board finally voted to discipline the library director that stole over $3,000. Attending were Sandra Crabtree, who was a board member at the time, Wendell Sweeten, Francis Merriman, Ms. Grimes, you voted for that.
But
Brian
that was a
Carter.
whole different, that was a whole different.
I agree, it was a much worse
And
scenario.
we were
than this.
all new. We were all board members. We were not the previous board members.
I don't think that would have kept you from terminating someone that had just pled guilty to stealing thousands of dollars.
But that was 2017.
well, let's not
Absent
get
from the
roped
meeting was Mr. Lodge, Megan Duggar, and Linda English.
let's
Well, my point
let's
is
not
not,
stray.
my point is not to berate or disparage anyone through the history of this county. And if it came off that way, that's not my intent. My intent is to point out the gross disparity between how a very serious criminal felony offense is treated versus a failure to conduct an inventory where there's no mention of this very important.
And we're not in a
aspect.
position to go back and change that. So
Well, it's
that's
a precedent established by the board of which you were a member, Chairman Lodge.
17.
No, he wasn't.
In 2022, when they voted
You said
to,
17.
at 17 is when the theft occurred, according to the auditor's report. In 2022, the board finally voted to discipline her. 4 or 5 years later, after she was indicted for theft.
It had nothing
This
to
was the
do with
board that
that
voted to
theft.
handle that.
What we disciplined her for had nothing to do with that particular theft in 2017.
So she was still a board member.
She was still,
let's-
So you were disciplining her again after she had already pled guilty to theft and still didn't fire her?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the issues before the board, the question is, did Ms. Crabtree have the power and authority to terminate the library director? And if she had that power and authority to terminate the library director, should we uphold that decision, modify the decision, or reverse the decision? There's also, we've presented evidence about the fact that she did have the authority, whether it was as a full-time executive director or a executive director who was still playing that role until, as a contractor, until we could get somebody in place. And obviously, there's no question that the power to appoint the executive director lies with the board. Did she have that power? Yes, she had that power. And let's see. So, assuming that the board finds that Ms. Crabtree had the power to terminate a library director, should we uphold that decision, modify it, or reverse it? Any of the board members would like to ask questions or make statements at this point?
Mr. Chairman, could I ask the board to vote on whether Ms. Crabtree in fact had that authority, or is that their declaration?
No, I think they should. I think they should vote on whether or not they, as a board, had the power.
Do I hear a
to-
motion on the
whether they-
board?
Whether they had the power, did they intend to grant her that authority by the actions they took when they made her a consultant?
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, so I believe they have to vote for that, before you could move to step 2.
Point of clarification. We're voting on whether Ms. Crabtree had the authority. The authority.
The minutes that occurred and the discussions that you all had as a board, I believe, on that March the 7th, maybe, meeting,
created the new structure for moving forward, while you were searching for an executive director, did the board that has the power to select, to give to an executive director, did you intend your actions to vest the power in Sandra Crabtree to continue to act as executive director until the new director was actually seated and working?
You want to make a motion?
Oh, my goodness.
Somebody like to make a motion?
Did
Yeah, I'll
you
make a
get that,
motion.
Did you want to work?
I make a motion to, after the lawyer said we need to decide if Ms. Crabtree, as executive director position, had the authority to do the disciplinary action, verbal warning, written warning, and termination of the employee.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion?
Could you repeat the motion for the audience, please?
The motion, here, Junior, you're good at this.
She's writing it.
I'm trying to write it exactly as he said it, it's taking me just 1 second. Yeah, okay.
I'd like to say something.
Well,
He's a man right here in front of me because he stands up and he speaks. Nobody else is standing up and speaking to the audience.
Thank you.
Had the authority.
Have the authority, okay. I want to have this exactly as he said it, so if you'll give me just a moment, please. After expired, reprimand.
Terminate.
Or terminate.
I believe that the most simple statement is did Ms. Crabtree did the board continue to vest the powers of the executive director in Ms. Crabtree while she was serving as a consultant until the new director was seated and in place? Sam, was that a fair?
So, I guess if you want to word it, office, in minutes show that she was hired, so it's your board, so I'll defer to her place.
Retain the powers of the executive director within Mrs. Crabtree until the new director, the new executive director was,
Began employment.
began
Well,
employment.
wouldn't say begin. She didn't begin till May 1.
No, because she had a 2-week,
So, because technically, I think Sandra Crabtree was paid full executive director's salary until April 14th or 15th. Then any kind of contract that she came back in and worked with the new executive director just a few hours to help her get into the computer, and that's the contracted part of it. Not the fact that she was not, she came in like May something or something and worked with the new executive director. That was the contracted part. She was paid the full salary of an executive director till April 15th.
She had been no longer in that position.
Well, she was.
Exactly, she wasn't.
She was.
Excuse me.
So, for point of clarification, if she received that full pay until April 15th, the termination wasn't until April 21st.
Who's the
She was acting as,
You did the
she was acting, in the day that Kellye was terminated, Sandra was acting in the role of the acting executive director.
That's what the board has to vote on. Yes.
Did she have that?
Did Sandra continue in her role as acting executive director up to and including up until the day the new executive director began work? Or was there a period of time that there was no?
What happens when you're being
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Vicky second.
Can you read it, Vicki?
I will as soon as I verify in the minutes what was said.
Thank you.
Motion was made to stay full time till Monday, March 31st. If it was not been hired by that time, it will stay full time until after that.
Yes, in minutes.
So it's not 20 days.
To the minutes that she will.
May I read this
Yes.
first? I want to read exactly what the minutes state, because he said the minutes are the word. Therefore, I only want to read it so that we get the motion correct as everyone would like to have it. The board wanted to make sure a plan was in place for the efficient transition of the newly hired executive director. A motion was made by June Grimes for the current executive director, Sandra Crabtree, to stay full-time until Monday, March 31st, 2025. If a suitable candidate has not been hired by that time, the current executive director, Sandra Crabtree, will stay full-time until Wednesday, April 16th, 2025. After that date, April 16th, 2025, the current executive director, Sandra Crabtree, will then be paid on an hourly contract basis for work performed as the executive director until a suitable candidate is found.
And hired. Implication be and hired.
It's in our minutes.
All right,
That's exactly the way it is.
so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I so moved.
Chairman Lodge, I'm still not sure what the motion is exactly. She read from the minutes of March. I'm still not sure what the motion
Well,
is.
she gonna figure that
I
out.
wanted to verify what the dates were on it, just for everybody. Okay, the motion was to retain the powers of, Sandra Crabtree was to retain powers of the executive director until the director, and I'm sorry, did you say hired? Was,
Began
or
employment.
began employment.
All right, that's the motion. Do we have a second?
I will. I second.
June, is there any further discussion? If not, a vote of aye.
Roll call.
I understand that, but the motion is worded so that a vote of aye means she had that responsibility.
Aye, yes, that you think she should, and nay is no. That she did not have the authority.
Robert?
Correct? Aye.
Wendell?
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries that she had the authority. Now, that leaves us,
Who asked you?
and we do have a quorum, there's no doubt about that. So, it boils down to the issue of, should we uphold the decision to terminate Ms. Hogan's employment, modify the decision, or reverse the decision? So, we will need a motion to uphold the decision, modify the decision, or reverse the decision. Do I hear a motion?
I make the motion that we uphold the decision made by Sandra Crabtree.
Is there a second? I'll second. We'll have a roll call vote.
Okay. No. Aye.
Aye.
That's right.
At this time, I abstain.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the decision is upheld. I would like to remind everyone that it's the policy of the Marion County Library Board that when an employee is discharged or resigns, regardless of the circumstances, that employee should be treated with the utmost respect and courtesy. This part of our meeting is adjourned. Now we will move into the,
Wasn't there a part about public comments?
well, we're moving into that. We have a specially called agenda. These are clear. There's been one request. Chris, you've got 3 minutes. Excuse me, y'all be respectful and have a speaker.
Good evening. My name is Christine Van Hammersfeld. I have a concern regarding the Marion County Library Board minutes from the board's April 10th.
We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I have a concern regarding the Marion County Library Board minutes from the April 10th special called meeting. The minutes state, quote, "She gave us a copy of her letter, see attached, regarding each of these matters that she shared with Jackson." I most definitely did not provide a copy of any letter or anything else to the Marion County Library Board when I spoke on April 10th or any other time. And just a little background, I spoke during public comments at the April 10th meeting when they hired a new executive director regarding my concerns about their process. The minutes that I'm talking about are from that meeting. Okay? Therefore, I can only assume that Mayor David Jackson provided someone on the board with a copy of the April 8th, 2025 email correspondence that I had with the mayor following a phone conversation that we had. There are two lessons here. One, the information provided in Marion County Library Board minutes is not always accurate. Two, email correspondence with Mayor Jackson is not treated as confidential. So I'm requesting that the minutes from April 10th be corrected with the correction then approved by the board and the corrected version published on the Marion County Library website, which is available for everyone on the board to see and everyone sitting out here tonight. I'm also submitting a public records request for a copy of the quote letter that I was said to have provided so that I know exactly what was provided to the library board and a written explanation of how this erroneous statement came to be included in the April 10th meeting minutes. Okay? I also want to point out that at the June 10th special called meeting, when you were discussing the next executive director, the one that you just hired, there was conversation about the applicant's age. Okay? That her age was appropriate. I won't state what the age was, but it was clearly stated, and that is wrong.
Yes.
Okay?
You'll make that statement. We have 4 witnesses.
Finally, with regard to the whole question here tonight about inventory, inventory is something that I do have experience with, library inventory. Okay? And I agree with Ms. Grimes that a complete and accurate annual inventory is necessary for 2 reasons: to maintain an accurate library catalog for patron use and to accurately report the number of items in the collection and accurately assess the dollar value of the collection. Libraries funded by taxpayer dollars and the entities that provide governance and oversight of libraries have a responsibility to track and inventory library assets on a regular basis. However, I have read the policy manual that's been provided to me, and I cannot find anywhere in there a policy for inventory in the Marion County Library Board policy. There is no inventory policy. Historically, the board has made no effort to maintain accurate inventories of the libraries it was and is responsible for. It has been reported that libraries have never done inventory. The inventory process is addressed in a document called the Collection Development Section of Comparison of Responsibilities, which is provided by the Tennessee State Library and Archives. It states that the trustee must, quote, monitor the execution of a regular inventory of the materials collection. Apparently, the board has never seen fit to do that or decided that that was important to do, even though taxpayer money pays for the collection in each library. Inventory does take time, and you have to reconcile the data that you get from scanning the books. You have to run reports. You have to decide what is missing. Is it really missing? Is it misshelved? Is it miscatalogued? Scanning the books is the first step, the beginning step in an inventory. It is not the beginning and the end. Librarians need formal training on the inventory process. As far as I know, training has not been provided to the librarians, nor have manuals, documentation on the process been provided. As it was stated earlier, it was not completed in Whitwell. Without an accurate annual inventory of each library, Marion County Library Board is not able to provide accurate data for annual audit purposes and cannot confidently set collection development goals to fill in gaps in the collection and meet patrons' current interests. Thus, the board has failed to provide sound fiscal stewardship of taxpayer dollars through the inventory process and failed to facilitate a process vital for informed collection development. And I do know what a collection is and what collection development entails. Finally, as Marion County Library Board has no written policy requiring an annual inventory and has not provided librarians with the necessary training or documentation, it is currently not reasonable, and in the past was not reasonable, to expect any Marion County librarian to complete an inventory of the collection. Instead of ensuring inventory success through training and logistical support, in my opinion, Marion County Library Board has set librarians up for failure and then held them responsible when inventory was not successfully completed in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is...
Can I have a copy from you?
not from my notes, I'll send it to you later.
Chairman Lodge, if I'm not being wrong about that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, board members. Thank you.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Wendell, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, y'all can figure out who did that. All in favor say aye. Thank you. We now have the minutes of the May 19th regular meeting to approve.
Well, I did. I do agree that way.
All right, so is there a motion to approve those minutes? Wendell, is there a second? All right, you got it. All in favor say aye.